All right, everybody, welcome to this edition of Alumless Takes. Thanks so much for making the Alumless feed part of your podcast listening habits. I'm grateful for my friend, Kelly Holdcraft at William and Mary for joining us today. Kelly, how have you been?
I've been great. It's been a busy summer and fall, as I'm sure everybody in higher education. It's been a very interesting time to be in higher education and always busy as we start ramping up towards homecoming and all the other fun things that are happening here on William and Mary's campus and beyond.
Yeah, this time of the fall really is pretty much kind of full blast in terms of being everywhere all at once. It's been a few months since I've had the chance to make the roll from Richmond over 64 East over to Williamsburg, but looking forward to doing that again pretty soon. I want to thank our sponsors of Alumless as well, Protopia, Alumni Q, and version 2.ai by GiveZ. Thank you so much for supporting the show. We're really grateful. Kelly, let me ask you a little bit about your title. You are
Mhm.
the executive director of Alumni Success. And when I looked at your LinkedIn profile, it said alumni engagement prior to this. Talk a little bit about the change of title to the notion of alumni success and how has your role or team changed in this evolutionary moment for you?
To me and to my team, alumni success is the future term. It's the future state of alumni engagement. And it really is about kind of and I say this in my LinkedIn and beyond, it's like it's a two-way investment. It's not just that we're just trying to engage our alumni, it's that we're investing in the success of our alumni through all of our programming, through all the things that we're doing. And then our alumni appreciate this and understand it, and they're invested in the success of William and Mary. So, it's we also say that we're invested in the success of alma mater now and for all time coming, which is a beautiful William and Mary line from our royal charter. Because as you know, William and Mary is 333 years old. So we're trying to think about how we stay around for the next 333 years.
The
Same
notion
with
of alumni success is sort of indicative of a two-way conversation, right? That you want to have with alumni, recognizing that it's not just you sort of talking at people, right? It's this dynamic where you're building trust and you're establishing rapport and you're purposefully creating relationships and stewarding those relationships. Talk about a little bit of your work when it comes to alumni segments, particular
Mhm.
audiences. You and I have talked a little bit in the past about your work in the area of young alumni, particularly what's worked as you've developed strategies to engage hard to reach groups like young alumni.
I think the first thing, Ryan, is that I'm not only working with young alumni, but my team also works with student engagement because I think that that's really the key is that you have to start when they're students and you have to be, thinking about how you're stewarding your students throughout their journey. And especially for us, it's thinking about our seniors as they make that transition into young alumni. And we're really working to make sure that our students feel comfortable being part of alumni engagement. We do that by making sure they're comfortable with even just coming to the alumni house. We don't want it to be thought of as this building on the hill. We created these alumni study halls. So they've morphed into like these multi-day study halls that are on campus in the alumni house. And it gets just students back here. It gets them feeling comfortable with what are the alumni benefits. We even have our old guard council be the greeters. So they're feeling like, they're seeing kind of the full cycle of alumni engagement. But I think also one of the key things that we're doing is that we're making sure that we're getting their contact information. It sounds so silly, but it's so important.
So important, yeah.
It is. It's like, what's your non-William and Mary email? And then the other key thing is, where are you moving when you graduate? And I don't need your address. Like, I get it. I don't want to create stress for these seniors, but even like manifest, where do you want to be? And we utilize that information for our youngest grads as we start looking at our Welcome to the City events. We've put it into the system and said, look, to our folks, like, I get it, we don't have their address, but please code them Chicago. Even though it says they live in Richmond at their parents' house, can you code them to Chicago so that they're getting the information right off the bat? And then we're using that information to make personal outreach, text, personal outreach, just making sure that they feel welcome in that city. So those are some really like two really key things.
So if I understand, Kelly, you have the alumni house at William and Mary during the
Mhm.
exam period. You're sort of opening it up and inviting students to specifically have study halls. It's attended and ushered by your old guard alumni, which is alumni that graduated a
50
certain
years.
50 years prior. So that's a fun dynamic. And you've had students, undergraduates and graduates, I imagine, take you up and you're
Mhm.
filling up the building during the exams?
Uh, It was one day, now it's 2 days, and we're getting 250, 300 students who are coming both days to the Alumni House. And it's actually even morphed to, we have a partnership with our student and young alumni philanthropy where we're doing giving campaigns to our young guard and saying, we did one in May. I'm sure we'll do another in December. That's basically like donate $5 to give a student at study hall a Celsius, which PS, that's how you get students to come to the alumni house, is you guarantee them really good snacks, great Celsius, and a lot of electric plugs.
Yeah, well, that makes total sense. And it sounds like a great way to make a positive impression about that physical place, as well as that sort of sense that the alumni really care about their success and to break
Mhm.
down some of those early barriers to future engagement before students have left campus.
Yeah.
Kelly, you and I have had some conversations about journeys, alumni journeys in the past, and you recently presented at the Case Young Alumni and Student Engagement Conference on the subject of mapping journeys. I want to sort of ask you if you could share a little bit about what that presentation was all about, and then maybe some of the reflections you've had on the notion of journey mapping subsequent to that presentation.
Customer journey mapping is not something that I created. It's something that businesses use. Whether you realize you're on a journey with a business or not, you are. They have huge user experience, customer journey mapping teams and departments especially for online shopping. So I'm taking kind of those tenets and layering that over the alumni journey path. And I think that with young alumni and students, people tend to feel a little bit lost. Like, "Ah, gosh, I don't know where to begin. I don't, this is they have this whole new generation. How do I make them do what I want them to do? Because they're so different than the generations that we've engaged before." And, when I'm a little lost, I tend to look to research. And as you know, I'm a doctoral candidate at William and Mary. And my research is on Gen Z emerging adults who are making the transition from being undergraduates into young alumni. And how do we create resources and support in order to help them make a successful transition into adulthood? So, when I think about being lost, I always think about like, I need a guide, I need a map. And that's what the customer journey map did for me. I could look at it and see like how we could take our students to young alumni through a customer journey of building awareness, of, looking at consideration and research, engagement, support, advocacy. Like, it absolutely showed the arc of what we want our youngest alumni to do. And, a customer journey map, it's not something fancy. It's a visual tool. I literally created it in a spreadsheet. So it's not something that you have to have a MBA in or some type of particular software tool. It really is just thinking about how you're segmenting your personas or your group through a journey. Um,
In
and
your
I
case, it
think that,
was specifically from, say, like, I think if I remember, it was graduation to the 5 year, their first reunion, right? So it was like get a sort of a starting point, which may actually have been before graduation in your
yeah.
journey, but then to that point in time, sort of imagining the touch points that should exist across different categories of the four case, the modes of engagement during that time. If does I have, do I have that right?
Yeah, the great thing about customer journey maps is you can define whatever journey you want it to be.
Yeah.
And for us, it's the senior year up through what we call first three. So the first 3 years of graduations. And because we're doing this in a matrix way, it's not just alumni engagement that's taking this journey. I'm working with our annual giving team and also our university marketing team to map this out together so that we can make sure that we're all kind of pointing our young alumni in the same direction. And 5-year reunion is something that maybe in the engagement world, we might not have thought about. That's where we want to lead people. But also, I knew that in order to be the best partner that we could be with our team in annual giving, like we can absolutely talk about how we're mapping people towards their 5-year reunion. So, just trying to think differently about that and like what are the opportunities that are being created out of it.
To hit some clear marks along the way, right? That you've got a sort of a plan across this time horizon, and of course, every new graduation cohort is at it, therefore, be at a different point
Time
along that
period.
continuum where you're working very hard to sort of reach and hit those touch point marks. I love that. Well, Kelly, tell me a little bit more. What are you guys thinking about, strategizing on, incremental improvements you're looking to make this year at William and Mary? What are you focused on?
The big thing that I'm focusing on, kind of two large things, is we call this William and Mary Weekend in DC. It's a big signature event. So for me, project wise, I'm really focusing on that. And that's a completely different podcast, Ryan. Like, if people want to learn more about the William and Mary Weekend, hit me up on LinkedIn and we'll have a different conversation about that. But for our young alumni and for our students, I think the incremental improvement is just making sure that we're validating their wants and needs. And this is actually part of the customer journey map, because kind of two key elements of a customer journey map is evaluation. So making sure that each time you're hitting these touch points with people, that you're evaluating them. And if you look at the standards for evaluation, they map almost one for one to the case metrics. It's attendance, it's surveys and NPS, it's social media communications, it's purchasing, so philanthropy, it's volunteering and advocacy. But then a key thing about it is making sure that you're validating what you're doing, because a customer journey map or a customer journey is about the wants and needs of the consumer and the customer, not about the internal assumptions of the people who work in alumni engagement, which it sounds
What?
silly, but I think is revolutionary. We need to make sure that we're asking our alumni what they want and need. And something that, Ryan, is that we just finished a really successful alumni survey, and I cannot wait to get the generational information from that to see the differences, but then also like validate what we're doing and strategize from that. I'm really excited. We worked with Washburn and McGoldrick on it. We're working with Chris Marshall, thinking about,
That
he
guy?
talks about, yep, that guy. I mean, we'll bring him around again. But Chris talked about, it's the what, it's the so what, and we're in the stage of the now what. Like, how are we using that survey information to create strategy?
Yeah, I like that. What, so what, now what? All right, Kelly, final question. Tell me about a book, a movie, a podcast, an app, an article, anything that you might recommend.
You know me well, Ryan. I don't have one. I have two.
Love it. Two is great.
It was great. Also, it's kind of something new and something old, which I think is appropriate given that we're talking about generational differences. So the new is, I really love Substacks. I love podcasts, but I find that you sound very different on 1.5 than you do on 1. So I like Substacks because I can read it at my own
I'm
leisure.
thinking about starting a Substack, actually.
Yeah. I just feel like it's a way for me to consume more information
Yeah.
at my own speed and my own in my own way. And a little bit of a disclaimer: this is a William and Mary alum Substack. His name is Sam Pressler. He has created a Substack called Connective Tissue, and Sam is an expert in civic engagement, and he's also a student of Robert Putnam. Robert Putnam is a legendary social scientist from Harvard. He wrote the book Bowling Alone, and it's about how, this kind of decline in community connections. I mean, the whole kind of premise is that people don't join bowling leagues anymore. Like, I bet you, Ryan, your parents were on a bowling league.
Well, I've
I know my
heard, I listen to Ezra Klein's podcast a lot, and hit this particular scholar, author, he mentions a few times. So I do know what you're speaking of, although I've not read his books.
Yeah. Well, they're social science books and they're like this thick.
Yeah.
They're much more research tomes than like at the end of the day kind of books. But it really is about encouraging people to join clubs and like micro community and micro engagement. Because I think that what we do, sometimes we try to think so big when, especially with our younger alumni and students, we need to probably think a little bit smaller, because how that's how community is built. So Connective Tissue, Sam Pressler, great. My old is Moneyball, one of my favorite films. And I always think about it because this is, the movie about how Billy Beane, played by Brad Pitt,
Yep.
starts bringing in data. Yeah, data into baseball. And I always think about how it's about change management. It's about, how data and how you can just become better and different through data. And I always think about the scene where the scouts are like sitting around, talking about the players, and they're assessing the players based on whether or not their girlfriends are pretty or not. And they're like, that guy has an ugly girlfriend. He lacks confidence. And Billy Beane is like, stop. What are you talking about? So I think about it in alumni engagement in that, the way that we used to think about our events was like, everybody was smiling, everybody had a great time. And then afterward, you start layering an NPS on that, and you're like, oh my gosh, they did not have a good time. So, just thinking about how we're evolving with data and AI, and just like thinking about the change management of it. So, and also
Yeah.
it's nice to see Brad Pitt. So
Hey, yeah, that's a classic. Awesome. Well, Kelly Holdcraft, Executive Director, Alumni Success, William and Mary, thank you so much for joining me on Alumless Takes. Look forward to seeing you again real soon. Thank you so much for your thoughtful insights today.
thank you so much, Ryan, for this opportunity.